Dedicated to telling the stories of Black and brown queer community members. Currently, there's a movement to create safe spaces as incidents of violence spike around the country. Now, since the start of 2021, at least 24 trans and gender non-conforming people have been killed. That's according to the Human Rights Campaign. In a month of April alone, the National Black Justice Coalition reported at least 7 trans women, all of them women of color, were killed. 5 of them were Black. Now in May, 3 more trans women of color were also killed. Numbers are so startling. So where are safe spaces for Black queer people? Clearly got to discuss that and talk about that right now. Well, you've probably heard of the legendary Negro motorist's Green Book. Well, it was a guide first published in 1936, dedicated to providing a list of hotels, restaurants, and towns that were safe for Black travelers. Well, now it's getting a 21st century reboot. Joining us now to discuss just that is the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition, David Johns. He's actually the brainchild behind the Lavender Book App. Thank you for joining us, David, and welcome to BNC Live.
Thank you for having me, Tashana.
So I got to ask you, were you inspired by the first Green Book to start Lavender Book? Was that an inspiration for you?
Absolutely. As my Nana would say, there are very few things that are new under the sun, and I want to acknowledge and celebrate that the Lavender Book is built upon the Green Book, as you so very eloquently covered in the opening package.
So tell us about that. Why was it important for you to create this guide for family, you know? I mean, we're all family, to have a safe space to be.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The internet was not allowing me to be great like a baby face. And so if I heard the question, it's why do we create it? And you know what's interesting? Before I joined you for this conversation today, I was working on a statement because a Black trans woman was just assaulted. She was attacked by 3 people in a laundromat in the District of Columbia. And I share that because it is probably the case for most people watching this conversation that they've never thought about whether or not they have to be safe while washing their clothes at a public laundromat, or whether or not they will be kicked out of a rideshare app because their fingernails are painted in ways that people assume are inconsistent with their gender presentation, or denied access to food at a bakery because one wants to hide behind religion in terms of their discrimination. And so there are everyday instances in which Black, queer, trans, and non-binary people are denied access to many of the things, including safety and access to public accommodations that so many other people take for granted, and that's why the Lavender Book App exists.
And I love that. I have a family member that is trans, and it's you just think about their safety all the time, and I think more about her safety than I do my own brother, you know, considering the climate we live in. So just tell us why it's important to make sure we're all able to be in safe spaces.
Yeah, none of us, in particular Black folks, acknowledging we're having this conversation centering Black folks in Pride Month, none of us can be free unless and until all of us are free. And as you mentioned, every year I find myself talking about that year being the deadliest on record for Black, queer, trans, and non-binary folks, and for Black trans women in particular. And for the reason that the labor that Black, trans, queer, non-binary people expend to ensure that we can all get free. I'm sitting under Brother Bob Rustin, the architect of the modern civil rights march on Washington, who introduced pacifism to Dr. King and so many other leaders. We don't acknowledge the labor that beautiful members of our communities whose lives are stolen expend. And we definitely then don't honor them when their lives are stolen. And so my hope is that this app will contribute to minimizing the trauma that we often experience, and will encourage more business providers and people who have access to public space to ensure that people are competent enough to demonstrate compassion in ways that allow all of us to show up and be free.
Okay, so now let's go to a happier note. What type of corporate support are you receiving?
It's interesting you asked that. I'm like, we could talk about Pride Pepper this month as well. As there are a number of corporations who have lots of rainbow campaigns, but who are investing in anti-LGBTQ campaigns. In particular, there have been over 111 anti-trans pieces of legislation introduced across state legislatures this year alone. We're really thankful for companies that not only understand the importance of making public commitments to our community during June, as well as during Black History Month or February, but who make that commitment consistent throughout the entire calendar year. We recently celebrated with Procter & Gamble and the virtual presentation of Can't Cancel Pride. We're really proud of our partnership with Sephora. We'll be doing a lot of work with them to celebrate Juneteenth, and then again in December. And there are a number of other corporate entities that, again, we are proud to partner with because they understand the importance of making the kinds of investments that allow all of us to bring our full selves to work so we can show up and show out.
Yes, David, you got big things popping over there. So for Pride Month in general, we see rainbows, we see performative support, as you mentioned, lots of corporations, big and small. What else would you like to see outside of capitalism profiting off of the movement?
I appreciate that question. What I would like to see is a remembering of the fact that pride is not about, it was not born out of rainbows and glitter, but it was born out of protest. So many people will celebrate Stonewall and its role in New York City Pride. Not enough people know that 10 years before that in Compton, California, closer to where I was born and raised in Inglewood, California, there was a demonstration at a donut shop. And that happened because there was a law in California that said that if your gender presentation didn't match your ID, that you could be denied service. Why one needs to look at an ID at a coffee shop is beyond me, but the point here is that there are laws that allow for the kinds of discrimination that lead to police and other state-sanctioned actors taking advantage of members of our community. And I would like for those stories that are not fictive things from some imagined Hollywood yesteryear, but are very real and present dangers to be centered as we talk about ways that all of us can be working better so we can all be free.
Love that. David Johns, Executive Director of the National Black Justice Coalition and the creator of the Lavender Book. Thank you for joining us on BNC. We look forward to welcoming you back. And happy Pride Month.
Thank you to Shani, and thank you to your producers for making space for me to come back again. The internet didn't let me be great yesterday, so I'm really thankful for all that was done to make this conversation possible.
Now, you were fabulous. Completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And up next on BNC Live, some of the stories making headlines in the U.S. and around the world. This gentleman here, he's in some hot water. He slapped the French president in the face. Now a judge slapped him with more than just a slap on the face. That story when we come back. You're watching BNC Live.
BNC presents Juneteenth, a celebration of truth. Join Start Your Day starting at 6 a.m. as we honor this important moment.